inside the White House.
President Trump did not fail to act. He chose not to act.
Investigators paint their clearest picture yet of what President Trump was doing as rioters invaded the Capitol and the efforts by staff to get him to respond.
How quickly could the president have gotten on camera in the press briefing room?
It would take probably less than 60 seconds.
What we're learning and what comes next as the House Select Committee continues its investigation.
The dam has begun to break.
Demanding answers. Protesters push for accountability in the wake of Sunday's police shooting in Lodo.
Our streak of very hot days continues. Tomorrow we could reach triple digits, but there is some relief in sight. I'll break it down in my forecast.
187 minutes of inaction by our nation's president. That was the focus tonight as the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th insurrection delivered their closing argument in this chapter of their investigation.
Tonight's hearing painted a chilling picture of what President Trump was doing, or more importantly, not doing, as a mob of his supporters invaded the U.S. Capitol.
Committee members saying his actions were a supreme violation of his oath and part of a coordinated effort to overturn the election. Denver 7's Jessica Porter takes a look at how the hearing unfolded. Jess?
And Shannon, the hearing showed that during those 3 hours, an overwhelming number of the former president's closest aides, advisors, and family members, including Sean Hannity and Donald Trump Jr., urged him to call off the mob. But the president refused for 187 minutes until finally, gently telling them to go home. Revealing testimony from former White House counsel Pat Cipollone and other aides that former President Trump ignored the advice of senior officials and even his own children to call off the mob.
Up until 417, continue, you and others, to push for a stronger statement.
Yes.
Were you joined in that effort by Ivanka Trump?
Yes.
By Eric Hershey?
Yes.
By Mark Meadows?
Yes.
One of the most shocking revelations, a White House security official whose identity is being protected, testifying the vice president's Secret Service agents were yelling in chaos on the radios and were close to using lethal force against the rioters.
It was disturbing. I don't like talking about it, but there were calls to say goodbye to family members, so on and so forth. It was getting, for whatever the reason was on the ground, the VP detail thought that this was about to get very ugly.
Former Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Matthews and former Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Pottinger testifying in front of the committee. Pottinger resigning on January 6th after seeing Trump's tweet calling Pence a coward as the mob chanted, "Hang Mike Pence."
The tweet looked to me like the opposite of what we really needed at that moment, which was a de-escalation.
The committee says for 187 minutes, the president watched the Capitol being attacked on TV, and instead of ordering the military to step in, was calling senators to delay certification of the election.
I said, Mr. President, we're not doing much work here right now because they just took our vice president out, and matter of fact, I'm going to have to hang up on you. I've got to leave.
Matthews testified Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany and others urged the president to put out a statement calling for the mob to peacefully leave. But the president wouldn't compromise on the language.
So she looked directly at me and in a hushed tone shared with me that the president did not want to include any sort of mention of peace.
After more than 3 hours, the committee says Trump finally filmed his Rose Garden address, again claiming the election was stolen, telling the mob, "Go home, we love you, you are very special," then retired for the day as rioters continued their attack on the Capitol. The former president has yet to issue a response to tonight's hearing, which the committee says will be their last until September. Of course, a lot to unpack and still some unanswered questions. Who was the January 6th witness Trump contacted, possibly committing witness tampering that co-chair Liz Cheney teased at the end of the last hearing? And what will come of the revelation that the Secret Service erased text messages that could help verify some of the most stunning testimony? Shannon?
It was chilling testimony. Thank you, Jessica. And continuing our in-depth coverage of the hearing tonight, there was another stunning revelation. The committee played never-before-seen outtakes from a video address Trump recorded the day after the insurrection. And in it, Trump refuses to say those who attacked the Capitol broke the law. Also, the former president refused to say the election was over.
But this election is now over. Congress has certified the results. I don't want to say the election's over. I just want to say Congress has certified the results without saying the election's over, okay?
Here now, even 18 months after leaving office, Trump continues to falsely claim this election was stolen.
And many have asked if these hearings could end with the former president being charged with a crime. Well, going in depth now, according to a poll released today by National Public Radio and Marist University, 57% of Americans who say they've been paying attention to the hearings believe Trump is to blame for the riot, while half said they believe he should be charged with a crime. Ultimately, 6 in 10 respondents say they don't think the former president will face charges. It is not up to the House Select Committee to charge Trump. That decision would have to be made by the Department of Justice.
And more depth on this for you tonight. Let's give you a better look at the hearings up to tonight. Now, tonight's public hearing was the 8th held by the January 6th committee.
The first public hearing was held on June 9th, and during that first hearing, Vice Chair Liz Cheney from Wyoming sent a clear message to her Republican colleagues still supporting Donald Trump, and she said, "The day will come when Donald Trump is gone, but the dishonor that will follow will remain."
Then came former Attorney General Bill Barr's testimony. He testified that he told Trump his claims of election fraud were false. Even the president's daughter Ivanka said Barr convinced her Biden had won.
And former Vice President Mike Pence's lawyer took the stand. He said Pence refused to leave the Capitol on January 6th, instead opting to continue counting the electoral votes.
Then some of the most recent hearings focused on the president himself. First, his acting attorney general said Trump wanted voting machines seized, even drafting an executive order to have the military seize those machines.
And on the day of the insurrection, Trump's chief of staff testified that the president knew his supporters were armed and dangerous, and he tried to force secret security to drive him to the Capitol to allow him to march.
Then at the hearing last week, Liz Cheney said President Trump tried to phone a witness in this investigation, presumably to try to influence them. The Department of Justice has been notified.
Once again, hearings will resume in September, and you can get caught up on all of our January 6th coverage and watch tonight's full hearing over at thedenverchannel.com. We will also have more coverage from tonight's hearing beginning at 4:30 a.m. on Denver 7 Morning News.
Okay, we have a weather action day in effect. Temps could hit triple digits tomorrow.
So let's send it on over to Chief Meteorologist Mike Nelson. Although it looks like some relief is on the way, Mike.
I have a little bit of good news after the bad news. High today was 98, 104 at Ray, 100 degrees at Greeley, and we have a heat advisory in effect northeast Colorado and out in the Grand Valley for tomorrow. All of these areas expecting temperatures 95 to 100 degrees. We are seeing an increase in the number of 95-degree days with climate change. We have 19 so far this year in 2022. Over the last 50 years, 15 more days on average in a summer with conditions above 95 degrees. So very hot tomorrow. But here's the better news. Some storms arrive Saturday afternoon. Not as hot for Sunday, and cooler, wetter weather coming up next week. Your full 7-day in about 15 minutes.
Tonight, calls for accountability after the police shooting in lower downtown Denver. 6 bystanders were injured when Denver officers fired at a man near a crowd of people. Police say that suspect, Jordan Waddy, flashed a gun at the officers. And this evening, protesters gathered at the state capitol demanding more answers about what happened.
Denver 7's CB Cotton's been tracking this small but vocal group of protesters. CB joins us live tonight. CB?
And Shannon, the demonstrators who gathered here at the Capitol this evening, they want a lot of changes. But at the top of their list, they want to see Denver police release unedited body camera video from the incident that happened at Larimer and 20th. But we know Denver police did a press conference yesterday, and they said in situations like this, it's out of protocol to share the video before their investigation is complete. But I can tell you, the folks who gathered here at the Capitol, they feel that protocol is outdated and lacks transparency. So I want to go to some of the video that we captured earlier of the demonstration. Things started at around 6 o'clock this evening. People carried signs and flyers. Around 6:30, protesters, they made their way down the Capitol steps and they began marching on Colfax. 2 of the organizing groups out here today were the Aurora Community Action Committee and Denver Democratic Socialist of America. In addition to the release of the body camera footage, they want restitution for the bystanders who were shot and the creation of a civilian police accountability council. And this is only naming a few of their demands. One organizer tells me until their request happen, they feel Denver police will never face accountability.
We also need to see the release of the unedited body camera footage immediately. And the DPD can claim that they've met that demand all they want, but they've only released photos and they have not released the unedited videos.
So long as there is not any kind of citizen oversight over the police forces, there will never be any type of transparency that we can reliably trust.
And Denver Councilwoman at Large Robin Knies, she also chairs the City Council's Safety, Housing, and Homelessness Committee. She released a lengthy statement this evening, but the core of her message said she shares the concerns that some community members had. She also wanted to reiterate that the investigation into the shooting will be done by an outside party, namely the Office of the Independent Monitor. I also want to mention we saw a robust law enforcement presence out here in downtown today, but there were no clashes between demonstrators and law enforcement to report on, which is always a good thing. For now, reporting live from the state capitol, I'm CB Cotton, Denver 7.
All right, thank you, CB. And during a press conference yesterday about this, Denver police released some new details, including this still image here from officer-worn body camera showing Jordan Waddy appearing to pull something from his jacket. 3 officers fired a total of 7 shots at Waddy. Police say the officers did not alert the nearby crowd before they fired. Commander Matt Clark said Wednesday this shooting justifies a review of DPD tactics.
Arrest warrant issued. Tina Peters again accused of violating her parole. What prosecutors say she did this time?
On a mission.
It just breaks my heart to see those kids who don't know who they're going to have a future.
Colorado women turn their focus toward helping children living through the war in Ukraine.
Less than a week away until the Broncos report to training camp. What Jerry Judy is looking forward to ahead of a season with mile-high expectations.